I would like to make you aware of a new folder Isadora creates when it is installed. Isadora creates a Python folder in the troikatronix folder alongside other previous plugin folders. Inside the Python folder, by default, is another folder named Python Virtual Environments, VENS. Inside of that folder, there's nothing by default, but everything is set up here for you to add Pythoner and start creating virtual environments as you need to. If we look at the Python folder that I mentioned previously, you'll see now that not only is there the Python VENS folder that I mentioned, there are now the Python support scripts, an active virtual environment path text file, a shortcut to open the Python window, and inside the Python support scripts are a number of, on Windows, they are bat files, but there'll be scripts on Macintosh for the same functions. And here we have scripts that will activate a virtual environment, create a virtual environment, install packages into a virtual environment, or open the Isadora built-in Python. So, quickly, the order that you would normally run these would be first to create a virtual environment, then to install any modules that you want in that virtual environment, and then to activate that virtual environment. The active virtual environment path text file is empty by default. And when it is empty, this means that Isadora is going to use the version of Python that is installed inside the plugin. On Macintosh, you can't modify this version of Python. Therefore, we've allowed you to create external virtual environments. So for many cases, the batteries included Python environment that is built into the plugin will allow you to do many different things, including interacting with SQLite databases, all sorts of stuff, comma separated value files, and I don't know, many things. But if you need modules, let's say OpenCV or Pillow or Beautiful Soup, I don't know, you'll need to install these separately into a virtual environment that you've created. If we take a quick look inside the Pythoner plugin, which on Windows is just a folder, you can see that we have the Python 3 and 3.10 DLLs, Python itself, the executables sitting here. It's basically a full install of Python. Generally, you won't need to do anything inside the Pythoner plugin itself. It's just good to know that that's where these things exist. NumPy is not included as part of the default plugin, but its functionality has been embedded into Pythoner for extracting images using the OpenCV image format. So you can't extract or input those format of images until you've added the NumPy module to the virtual environment. So if you want to use image input and output, you do in fact have to create a virtual environment and add NumPy to that virtual environment. Now, let's create a virtual environment for a project that we assume is going to require some image manipulation using the Pillow module. Okay, to start, we run the create virtual environment script. On Windows, that opens two windows, my command prompt and a browse for folder. By default, it's going to be aiming at the Python folder Isadora installed alongside the other plugins folders, and specifically the virtual environments folder within it. I'm going to say OK to that. I'm going to give my virtual environment a name. I'm going to call this virtual environment pillow. I'm going to hit enter. The virtual environment pillow was created. I say OK, and that's done. It automatically opens up the folder to show me. All the other windows have now closed. The process will be very similar on Mac. You're just running the scripts through the script tool, so you're going to have to open it there and hit the play button. You can see that in virtual environments, I now have a virtual environment pillow folder, and in here are libraries, scripts, the entireness of Python is there. So it's a full virtual environment that you could point any IDE towards if you wanted to create a project using the same Python environment. But at this point, it's just a basic environment, right? We've named it Pillow, but it doesn't have Pillow yet. So the next thing I'm going to do is run the batch file to install packages. It's going to aim directly to the same location by default. Inside there, I'm going to select the virtual environment that we just created, Virtual Pillow. Specify a package name. I want to install Pillow. So, as you can, package name is Pillow. It ran through it, downloading, installing, and the package Pillow was installed. It's great. So inside Pillow, inside libraries, site packages, we now have pill or Pillow. Those are the components added by that install. That's great. But here, this file is still blank, so Isadora is still going to be using the default Python interpreter that's built into the plugin, which does not have access to Pillow. So the last thing that we need to do to work with Pillow in this virtual environment is to activate the virtual environment. Again, everything's opening on my side screen, but you can see that the script is open and running. It's asking me to select, again, from the default environment or location, the virtual environment that we want to activate. I select Virtual Pillow. The Isadora virtual environment file was updated to point to OK. Now, if we look at this text file, I was opening the wrong thing. You can see that all that's been entered is the path to the raw virtual environment. So let's add NumPy to this virtual environment. The environment we're using is already activated. We've already created it. All we need to do is add NumPy. Again, it asks me to select the virtual environment. It's going to be Virtual Environment Pillow. NumPy is the name of the package. And again, it's downloading and installing it. And NumPy has been successfully installed. That's great. Here I have opened the Python examples file, and I've jumped ahead to the third scene, which uses Pillow and NumPy to load an image from the Troikatronix website and display it to the stage. clicking trigger, I can see that nothing's happening. So looking for feedback, by default, if we open the monitor window, where we normally expect this type of feedback, you can see there is no Python listed up here yet. And there's no feedback at this moment. If we click the trigger and I bring the window back, still no feedback. So one of the best ways to find out what the status of a script is at this point, other than writing to that window, because there is a write function, is just to open the script and close it again to recompile it. And you'll find that there's no module named requests. So additionally, this file requires requests that I haven't even documented. So we're going to need to install requests before we can use this script. And so I can do that. I can close this and just cancel that out. I'm going to modify this and requests. So one more time, I'll install another package. The environment, virtual pillow, okay. Brings me this and this. I'm going to call this requests, okay. Downloading and installing requests. And request does just what you'd think it might do. It deals with online requests. So, all right, that's installed. Now if I bring back the example file, open and close, it compiles properly because it now has all the modules that it requires. So that is pillow, NumPy, and request to run this. Okay, now that we have all the modules installed that we need to run this script, when we trigger the input, it loads the file from the troikatronix website and outputs it as vidGPU to the preview stage. Here I just wanted to show that I do some of my development in PyCharm. You could use any IDE that you like. In the interpreter settings, I've specified the same virtual environment that that we created with the scripts that were installed by the Python plugin. What this does is allows me to run from the same Python and same modules that we installed a script. And this is the exact same script that is inside the Python plugin on that example that we just ran inside Isadora. Now, the example file in the first scene kind of gives you a very simple version of this. This one has a little bit more scripting in it. But what I did is created a skeleton file that contains all the components that Isadora expects to see. So the Python initialization, Python main, Python finalize, those are all things that Isadora wants to see. But then I use the Python _name == main _ method of determining if it's running in the main process. And this allows us to run this code that's under here will only run when it's inside this interpreter running separately from Isadora. This does not get run because this condition does not get matched when it runs inside Isadora. So inside PyCharm here, you can see that I call the initialization, I call Python main, and I call Python finalize, which are the three steps that Isadora would do anyway. There's very little that happens in initialization. It just returns. Python main is really the only thing that does anything, and it gets a true, which is significant because that is my Isadora trigger. You can see it's my trigger. And if the trigger is true, I run the code inside. So that's a way of running this code from the Python plugin only when a trigger is received. So it grabs the PNG from the, well, first it defines a URL, then uses that URL with requests to get the URL as raw, and then it takes the raw image, passes that into a function here to convert it to a NumPy array that Isadora can recognize, returns that, and that is what is output to our preview. Now, if I make a quick, I happen to know that this failed a minute ago because I tested it. If I remove that and run this, you can see that I get some very good debugging sort of printout here, and I can step through the code line by line. I can use all of the debugging tools that PyCharm offers when I build my script in this manner, because then I can just cut and paste it back into Isadora and it runs the same way. So I've been doing a lot of my development this way. It's you can do the same thing with Microsoft Code. VS Code is a very good and free editor. If you're on Mac, it also works on Mac. And then there's many other options on Mac as well. Again, PyCharm has a free community version of this IDE that you can use on Windows or Mac as well. I just wanted to quickly show that it's very possible to set up your interpreter within an IDE like this and use the exact same code base.